Gary Lineker has been told to step back from hosting Match of the Day until he and the BBC have, and I quote, agreed a clear position on his use of social media. Let's speak now to the former official spokesperson for the Prime Minister. Alastair Campbell joins us on Drive. Alastair, hello, good evening to you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on at such short notice. Firstly, what do you make of the way the story is broke?
Well, I think it's a terrible decision, and I think it's also a very dangerous decision because this isn't about Gary Lineker and whether people think he's a good pundit, which he is, or whether they think he's a good bloke or not. It doesn't matter. What this is about the creeping right-wing authoritarianism, got a grip of the government, got a grip of the Tory party, and got a grip of our right-wing media, and they have created enough noise and enough fuss for the BBC to pander to it rather than actually act on principle. So I think it's a terrible decision, and it's got some terrible consequences because, okay, Gary Lineker says something about the illegal migrants bill. Alan Sugar presents The Apprentice. He said some really quite incredible things about Jeremy Corbyn when he was leader of the Labour Party. He said some things about Mick Lynch, which, and I would defend his right to do that, by the way, just as I would defend Gary Lineker's right to do what he did. What I wouldn't defend is Gary Lineker sit in the Match of the Day chair and present, hopefully next season, Burnley beating Liverpool, but then say, yeah, but, that's all very well, the football, but I vote Labour or I hate the Tories. That wouldn't be acceptable. But what he said was actually factually accurate. There are fewer refugees coming here than elsewhere, and factually accurate. A lot of the language in this debate is redolent of the 30s in Germany. So I think this has been blown up by right-wing authoritarian people inside the Conservative Party, media supporters, and the BBC has pandered.
Where do they go from here? Because it's a very fragile situation. And you mentioned Lord Sugar, some tweets he's put out. I would imagine there's quite a few other employees from the BBC that have also sent out tweets or used social media to put their political view across. It's a dangerous can of worms to open, isn't it?
I totally think, yeah, I agree. And like this today, there's a story in one of the newspapers. I don't know if this is true, but it's in one of the papers. And, so it says that David Attenborough's series, that they're actually spiking one of the episodes he was filming because they're worried it will provoke the right wing who don't think climate change is real, or they think that it's exaggerated. I mean, that is so dangerous. And you think some take Martin Compton, great actor, star of Line of Duty. He's a very prominent SNP supporter. Comes out the whole time talking about SNP and independence. Well, I think he should be entitled to. He's an actor, for God's sake. He's not. He doesn't owe his life to the BBC. Gary Lineker doesn't owe his life to the BBC. He's a freelance contractor. So I think this is a very, very bad move. I think it's dangerous, and it's what happens when you act as a management according to whim and noise in the media rather than principle. And are we seriously saying, this is the big point for me, are we seriously saying that a couple of tweets by Gary Lineker are doing more damage to the impartiality of the BBC than the fact that their chairman sits up there fixing £800,000 loans for Boris Johnson, making donations to the Tory party, being a mate of Rishi Sunak? It's just a nonsense, the whole total nonsense. And they've got to, I really do think the reason I'm so exercised about this, I actually think this is a really dangerous moment for democracy, and that's really not to overstate it. If you go back to the 30s in 1930s in Germany, it started with these little moves, these little things that seemed insignificant at the time, but they build and they build and they build and they build, and before you know it, we're an authoritarian country.
Alice, I know you're busy. I know you got to go. My last question to you: have you spoken to Gary Lineker today? I know he's your mate.
I haven't. No, I mean, I am a friend of his, and I've sent him the odd message saying, keep your chin up and hope you're all right and stuff like that. But but here's an interesting one. I did the BBC a few minutes ago, and they introduced me by saying Alastair Campbell, who has a business interest with Gary Lineker because Gary Lineker's company produces his podcast. And I said, that's interesting. So are you going to now promote every news bulletin on the BBC by saying this is the BBC whose chairman is a Tory donor? I mean, this is what I mean about the sort of cowardice of it all. And I'm not criticising the journalists. That's the environment and the atmosphere in which he's operating. But I do think it's dangerous, and I've got to say as well, Ian Wright, absolutely fair play to him. He's basically come out. He's come out on strike. He's basically joined in the strikes. He's saying if Gary's being treated like this for standing up for his values and his beliefs, then I'm not going to be there on the sofa. And I don't want to put pressure on anybody. I hope the others take note of that.
Do you think Shearer will join him?
I don't know, but I think it'd be very, very interesting if Tim Davie and Richard Sharp present Match of the Day. That would be, a lot of people would watch, that's for sure.
Alastair Campbell, thanks so much for your time. Let's go to the phone line, shall we? 03717222344. One of the questions I was asking, would it put you, the football fan, off watching it if Lineker is not on the show? Lineker and Righty as well. Pat is an Arsenal fan. Hello, Pat.
Hello, boys. How are we?
We're great. We're very well. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. I didn't think we'd be talking a political shot, but I don't agree with Gary Lineker. But at the end of the day, I thought we lived in a country that has free speech, and I must admit, the BBC taking action like this is absolutely ridiculous. Because if people think, because Gary Lineker, and I think he says a lot of things. I'm not on Twitter, but it gets reported what he says. I don't agree what he said, but because I think that's up to the country to decide where the country's going to go. I don't think we're anything like, what he mentions in this country. I'd like to think we're a safe haven for a lot of people, to be honest with you. But I think he was trying to emphasise a point, wasn't he? To be fair to Gary Lineker. And although I don't agree with his sentiments, I think he's well entitled to say, and I don't think football fans, look, Gary Lineker probably thinks Tottenham's going to win the league one day. I mean, we know that's absolute rubbish, so, it's just very sad that the country is, the BBC has done what it's done, because I think it's dug itself a hole.
Yeah, I agree with you. Will you boycott watching Match of the Day?
No, why would the boy? At the end of the day, look, I agree with Alastair Campbell there. I didn't think I'd say much of that. If Gary Lineker was speaking, if Gary Lineker was chatting about political issues on Match of the Day, that is a different situation and equation. Mm-hmm. So for me, Andy, I meant to say to you, what time do you finish tonight?
Well played, Pat.
About 5 minutes.
Well played, Pat.
About 55 minutes past 6.
Okay, fair enough, buddy. All right. You're too quick for me anyway. Unless he give you the heads up the other day that I was going to say that.
I thought I was getting a free lift home, pal. I thought you were going to be outside. Hey, listen, thanks so much for your call. Have a great weekend.
All right, you two. Up the Arsenal.
There you go, Pat, the Arsenal fan.
Honestly, I'm really interested to see what's going to happen tomorrow. Who presents it? Because
I think all the presenters will feel,
but you have to.
The co-host will feel so much pressure to turn that down.
Because all of a sudden, your colleagues will look at you differently.
You have to stand by them.
I know they'll always go, do you know what? I understand it. It's professional. But I'm telling you now, deep down inside, Gary Lineker, right, whoever it may be, will be thinking, you've stepped in, even though we're kind of showing solidarity, and you still want to do it.
And all the, I'm not going to name names, but we know who the pundits are on Match of the Day. They will all be getting a phone call in the next hour or two asking if they're available.
Yeah, no.
And every single one of them will feel under pressure as to say what the right answer. I don't know. I think the right answer is to say no.
Yeah.
If Lineker's not doing it, I stand by Lineker. I think that's what it should be. Yeah?
Yeah, you have to.
I think
Listen, Wright is one of the big dogs, and he's already taken that plunge.
Yeah.
So whatever happens after that, him and Lineker have taken the initial blow.
Yeah.
So whatever comes in after that is...
talkSPORT Drive with Andy Goldstein. Monday to Friday afternoon from 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.